Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larsen. On this episode, we've got repeat guest, Alex Bean. He's co-founder at Tandem. We're going to talk about that a lot today. Originally, I think this is appearance number 4. We had him on the show when he'd raised $30 million for his company Divvy, and then when they raised $250 million for Divvy, and then when they sold Divvy for $2.5 billion and started Tandem. And so I reached out and said, hey, now we need an update on Tandem. So Alex, thanks for coming back.
Anytime. I love the cloud of repeat guests. It's just like, hey, here we go. I'm excited to be back.
Well, and I need to apologize because I definitely shorted you 100 million. It's 2.6 billion people, not 2.5. That extra 100 billion matter. Extra 100 million matters.
Yes, we'll take it. It is 2.6, so we'll take it.
Great. Hey, why don't you tell people, for people who missed previous episodes, what's Divvy and then what's Tandem?
Yeah, so Divvy was a smarter credit card, right? So we were selling to businesses, specifically like 50 to 500 employees was the target. And it was for people that wanted budgets and expense reports and virtual cards. So just kind of a credit card with smarter software on it for the business. We built that from 2016 to when we exited in 21. We can get into that again, but that's what Divvy was. And then when I left, I kind of went on no one talked to me about business for a couple months. Let me just like regroup after the craziness that was Divvy. But then I got really, really bored, and I had a little bit of a journey for myself on what I wanted to do and be. And about a year after leaving Divvy, we started Tandem, which is a venture capital firm here in Utah, and a lot going on with that. But I love it. It's the space that I know, and so I love talking to early founders. And we just raised a $30 million seed fund, but we've been doing SPVs for around, I think we've done about $50 million in deals over the last 2 years.
And that's on the venture side, right?
Mostly on the venture side. We did a little real estate.
I was going to ask, how much real estate?
Very little. We did one deal with real estate. We might do some more depending on the market and what we see, but we have predominantly been a venture capital firm.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is interesting on the Tandem side of things is like this more than the money, like your platform for the high net worth families about legacy and your kids and stuff that, maybe isn't traditional finance, but is interesting to come from your perspective and your team.
Yeah, it's so when I left Divvy, obviously we had an exit, fortunate to have a wealth exit then. But I come from a family of entrepreneurs up in Seattle. I saw a great grandpa build something and a grandpa build something, and I saw money do this and I saw money do this. And it's kind of like the joke was you can take the red pill or the blue pill, and money can be this amazing thing for your future family and generations and your community, or it can literally destroy it. And drugs and alcohol, entitlement, jail. And I have seen both in my own family tree. So for me, it was like a big, holy crap, what pill am I going to take moment? And it's been this journey. And so I started interviewing a lot of high net worth people that had exits or were raised by people that were wealth creators, and have learned a ton, because the whole concept was I'm desperate that this is a good thing for my community and my family and my friends and my relationship with my wife and I. And so we tried our best to figure out what we could do. And after around 6 to 8 months of doing those interviews, we said, wait a minute, we think we have a little something. So we built a platform, we're writing a book, and we're really passionate, or I'm specifically passionate about helping people navigate the crucible that is wealth. It can be good or bad. So
do you have a working title for the book yet?
Navigating the Crucible of Wealth.
Okay.
Yeah.
For people who want to get on the advanced list to get notified when it comes out, where should they be emailing? Or
it's a hot seller too. Yeah. Way too many people online. No, it's come to Tandem Invest, get to know us there. We have a platform we can send access to specifically if you're high net worth. We're doing a lot of interviews. We'd love to pick your brain, and we'd love to kind of tell you what we're up to. We've already published a lot of this content. So again, it's free. We'd love to have people check it out.
And then for the non-high net worth people who just want to read your book when it comes out, do you have an email address or something that they can send to so they can get on the list of getting notified when it comes out?
Yeah, let's do alex@tandeminvest.com, just our website, but send it to me and then I'll have it there. And as it comes out, we should be publishing it up in the next, call it 2-3 months.
how many interviews total would you guess are going to be included in it, or like is it going to draw from?
Yeah, 100, 150, a fair amount.
Yeah. Who,
And a lot of these interviews were not just me too. It's like this stuff's all over the internet if you want to find it. So we're grabbing some stories that are kind of well known, but then about 100 plus interviews of our own.
yeah. Obviously, I'm a big fan of interviewing. Who is one of your favorites to interview for the book?
Yeah, two people. Um, Joseph Grenny, he wrote the
Influencer.
he wrote Crucial Conversations. And then he runs Other Side Academy down in Salt Lake, local. I'd gotten connected to him through my business partner's dad, who knew him in the nonprofit world, and talking to him, I love this guy. I mean, he's just like heart of gold. He understands, again, the good and the bad of things that money can do. What he's created with Other Side Academy is amazing. But as I talk to him, as an example, I'd say, hey, like a big component of creating wealth is like giving back, and what we call is creating a factory for good, and putting that money towards positive outputs and sustainable outputs. So I'm talking to him about it. I'm like, basically, like, teach me the best way you've seen people give money in the charitable space. And it wasn't just this off the cuff discussion. He was like, oh, I'm going to tell you the three things you need to do, the process and how to approach it. And boom, boom, boom. And it was super impactful, super inspiring. So my notes from him are like super long. So Joseph Grenny was amazing. And the other one I thought was really great was Jeremy Andrews, the Traeger CEO. He did Skull Candy. He's doing Traeger. And just like where it's family oriented, and so for grabbing a lot of this stuff, again, one of the other chapters is the bank of mom and dad, and it's what's the relationship with parents and kids when the parents have the money. How do you not just give it to your kids, and how do you interact in a way that's positive and teaches them grit and work ethic, while you can say yes to everything. He was awesome. So I thought he was really proactive, really good thoughts, and he had some really great stories and the things he's doing with his kids to try to teach them good principles.
That's so great. Um, my friend Ted Broman introduced me to Joseph Grenning. We went to this lunch
Yeah.
once, and I they were just launching Other Side Academy back then, and ended up introducing me to Dave DeRocher, who runs it. We actually just had back on the show again just a few weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Did you read his other book, Influencer?
I I think I've skimmed it. I haven't read it fully through.
One of my favorite things in there is the idea of like how you could use like systemized desensitization on yourself of like the things that you hate or the things that you freak you out, like how you could just like do this process to yourself in a positive way to calm down and tackle things that normally make you anxious. And anyways, super interesting
Yeah,
guy.
he wrote another book about addiction. Again, right? Like he grew up, or his son grew up in affluency, and his son got addicted to drugs. And I read it in one sitting. Like just his son is recovering, so he would write the chapter, and his son would finish up the chapter, and it was awesome. So yeah, I have a lot of admiration for Joe.
Yeah, no kidding. Um, well, I'd love to talk about the transition phase for a minute. Then, I think it was just right after the sale, before starting Tandem, that you and I went to dirt biking in the backcountry and had like a big talk on the top of the mountain. And like, I was like, I feel like I witnessed a little bit of that contemplation and you know the
It's a
decision
better
tree being
place to
routed.
have that conversation. I'd rather have that conversation with that vista, being outside than on Zoom. But um, yeah, it's interesting. So I had kind of been with startups prior to Divvy. So to me, it felt like a 10-year run of startups, which I love, but it is a certain pace, right? Like startups are a certain speed. So when Divvy exited in June of 2021, I said for the summer, like, don't call me. I'm not checking email. I'm not, looking. I really needed to detox. And I did, which was a lot of fun. Got to connect with my kids and friends and wife and all that fun stuff. As the kids went back to school, I just started to be like, hold on. Like they go off to school and I was at home, and I started, I think I told you about this, but I started doing stuff I've never done before because I'd always blamed it on I'm too busy at work. So like I took piano lessons because I was like, I've always wanted to take piano lessons. I've always blamed it on work, too busy. So I finally started taking piano lessons and ended up doing a recital with my kids. I'm like, they're all 8, 10, and I'm this 35, 38-year-old, doing the recital stuff.
So I'm interested because I hated piano when I got forced to take piano lessons as a kid. I never learned it. But then
Yep.
when you hear like Dr. Dre on the piano, I'm like, well, if they'd have told me that, I would have learned piano.
Yeah.
What do you like to play? Like, what's been fun to learn?
So I have since stopped playing. But so there are some really cool apps out there that you can take like a popular song that you know the melody of. Like I was watching the show Money Heist at the time on Netflix, and they had that melody. You could like play the app or play the song. I think piano is super pretty, and it's like a whole different language. So for me, it was this challenge to teach myself something new. Quote unquote, later in life, and it was really therapeutic. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't ultimately enough to keep me engaged full time. Like, all right, yeah, I'm a concert pianist because I'm not that talented. Um, but I also did other stupid stuff. Like I took sleight of hand magic card lessons for like 6 months with a guy because I'd always wanted to learn that skill. And so, I was like keeping myself busy doing these. So I have in the book, but one of the phrases or things we talk about is like you're hiking Money Mountain, right? And like there's this like ascent, and you're doing everything you can to look up at the top and say, "I'm going to get there," whatever your goal is. But you're like, "I'm gonna get to this goal." And so for years, I was motivated by that, staying up late, working, working weekends, whatever I could do to like get to that thing. And fortunately, was able to get to the top of quote unquote Money Mountain. And then I started hiking what I call Hobby Mountain, right? Piano, card lessons, golf, and it was fun and I actually liked it. But what like I'd go to bed at night and I would tell my wife, I'm like, I just didn't earn my sleep tonight. Like I just didn't. I'm not building anything. I'm not creating anything of value. Like I'm in, and it's that proverbial like, oh, once I make all my money, I'm going to go sit on a beach. And for me, it was super unfulfilling. And I started to like not hate myself because that's not really my personality, but I just started to really hate the life I was living and not find it fulfilled. So after a couple months of that hobby mountain stuff, I started to say, okay, what can I do to add value again? And it wasn't focused on money. It was more just like, what can I do to add value? And I started to meet with a lot of entrepreneurs because again, that was my space. Started teaching in local colleges like BYU and started mentoring programs. And then eventually it was like, okay, I like this. I get this. I understand how to talk about this. And then, it kind of bled into starting Tandem about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Um, what's been one of the most rewarding parts of doing Tandem?
Well, I do love building. For me personally, there's a difference. Like, what's most rewarding to me? It's like building something with like fun people that I want to build it with, and again, like we think we're doing some things a little different than everyone else, and it's just been fun to be back on the innovation side and say, okay, how can we approach this differently than other VCs? That's been fun. But at the end of the day, I view it as like the people that came before me in Utah because we're a young market. I call them Generation One. This is like Ryan Smith and Jeremy Andrews and all those guys, Josh James, etc. My generation, I'm calling Generation Two. It could be totally off. My generation is like podiums and weaves and divvies and lucids, etc. So for me, I'm like, hey, I grew up in a market like Seattle where it was small and it went to like one of the biggest markets in the world with giant companies. If I can make generation three or the next generation more successful than us, that only benefits like the community. It benefits my friends' kids that want jobs. And so I'm like, all right, let's roll up the playbook. I've been interviewing a lot of the founders, both unicorns and centaurs, myself, and saying not just for like an interview like this, but to be, hey, tell me your playbook. Tell me what you guys did that I could pass down to the next generation, or trying to connect those unicorns and founders. So we could say, hey, you've got a really cool company. You need to talk to that guy. Let's pair him up and let's try to pass the playbooks on. And to me, I'm like, great. If the next guy can sell for 3 billion and 4 billion, awesome. Because there's just that many more people that have had exits and opportunity, and Utah grows. So that's what I love, and I'm going to continue to focus on that as opposed to the financial outcome of Tandem.
Okay, so if we didn't have enough proof that I wasn't as cool as you, we have one more piece. What's a centaur? Is this 100 million, 100 billion? What's this?
Yeah, 100 million. I'm making up. We made up or I think we made it up. Basically, in Utah, and this is an interesting conversation about the Utah culture, which is different than San Francisco, as an example. There's a lot of guys that, men and women that sell their company in Utah before it hits a billion, but they haven't been heavily diluted, and they've actually built a really cool thing. So, there's a lot to learn from those people and their financial outcomes. And they sold for 130 million, which is not 2.6. But guess what? Their financial outcomes not that far off because of their lack of dilution and what they did to grow. So we've kind of organized the centaurs as anyone who sold from 100 to a billion, like pre-unicorn, and we talked to a lot of those guys as well.
Yeah. So let's maybe go back of like both your own experience and all these interviews. When you think about just a core principle for growing $1 billion business, like across my interviews, I find so often people have like, there's all these things are good, and then they're like, there's a couple that they feel like so strongly were like some of the main ones that made it work for them. So both, for yourself and what you've observed, what do you feel like is one or two like a core principles that you've just got like a real strong belief in?
So early or late, right? Is this like early stage founders, or is this people that they already have a nice business that's doing 10 to 50 million revenue, but they want to get it to the next level?
Let's do both. Let's do one for each.
Okay. Well, when I talk to an early stage founder, well, I look at two things, but it really comes down to one, and then you have to solidify it. So, like, what is your vision for what you're building, right? Like, why are you the person to do it? Why does the market want what you want? And why do you know what it is going to become, right? So at Divvy, what we were good at is we were both running small businesses, and we knew this like reactive scenario of swiping cards and then asking for forgiveness too late. And our companies basically were just having to deal with it. Okay. So when we started to talk to heads of finance people, when I would start to reach out and say, hey, we're going to build this thing that looks like X, Y, and Z, you could hear this product market fit just jump out of their voice. They'd be like, oh my gosh, wait, what? Like, you're going to build what? Like, oh, that's so cool. Can you do this? Can you do that? How much is it going to cost? When's it available? Like, you can hear this stuff that I would say is very much indicative of product market fit. And you have to match that with your vision, which is like, okay, I've talked to these people, or I've felt this pain, and I'm going to go build this thing. And like when we built Divvy, a lot of people thought we were kind of dumb. Not dumb like, oh, you morons, but like, hey, that's not the way the finance world works. Like, that's not exactly, the way that we're doing it. And we were super passionate about like, well, yeah, because the way you're doing it is like so outdated. It's literally old and outdated information. So to me, when I look at an early founder and I say, what decides someone who's going to make it or not, I usually look at like, what is your vision? What's your passion for that vision? Like, you better, when you tell me in 15 minutes what you're doing, I better feel it. Like, that enthusiasm better just bleed off the page or bleed off of your energy, where I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, they're onto something. And then the product market fit conversation is like confirming with me, oh, that's the credibility for their vision of like how it's not just some insane thing. Okay, so you with me on that?
Yep.
Can I give one more thing on this? Just I was talking about it this morning, so I want to bring it up because I think it's important for like early stage founders to hear this comment. So I'm going to give you one good example, one bad example. I call it the billboard theory, and I'll tell you why you're going to pass or why you're going to fail. So what makes a really good billboard? I'll ask you this question, then I'll answer from my side of things. What makes a really good billboard?
I mean, there's probably multiple answers. Off the cuff for me is like one that you can actually read the whole thing in the 4 seconds you're looking at it, and it resonates so much that it affects you.
Okay. So when you drive by, we see a lot of billboards here in Utah. Let's just use Homey because they're a real estate group. They have a lot of billboards. You clearly, when you see it, you have to read it and say, is this a fit for me? Am I a buyer of this thing? And you either have to know immediately, oh, I'm a renter, not a buyer, I'm out. Or like, no, I have a home, I'm a buyer. Okay, cool. And then it has to resonate, right? Like, I want to save money, therefore I would use it. In tech world, the bad example of this billboard theory is I'd say to someone, all right, Mr. Company, what are you selling? Okay, I'm going to sell it. I don't want it to be disclosed who this is. So we sell XYZ software and that XYZ software. Okay, who are you selling it to? Well, we can sell it to the CEO. We can sell it to the head of product. We can sell it to the head of sales. We can sell it to engineering. We can sell it to anyone. Like, horrible answer. Because to me, I'm like, well, how do you go to market with 4 different buyers? They want different things. Now, I'm not saying you can't expand and build Slack or an email system that all people use, but who is the buyer for this product? And so far too often when someone's telling me what their company is, they have to tell me who you're selling to. I'll use Divvy as an example. Okay, well, we sold to heads of finance. What are you selling to them? We're selling to them budgets, virtual cards, and expense reports for free. And then what are they saying about that offering that you have? Okay, well, here's what they're saying. Here's how they're resonating, if they're buying that or not. Way too many people early on will say something like, I have this grand vision. I think this is really cool. And I'm like, well, where's the revenue start? What is your strategy? And it's a bad billboard. They frankly cannot distill it down to the one sentence, to the one buyer, to tell me why that person's going to pick up the phone when they see the ad in this world. So there you go. That's my billboard theory. I don't know. I use it when I look at early stage stuff. So that's early stage. Later stage, I have a few theories here. For us, I'll talk about the car theory, and then I think there's another one that I think is important, and we'll call it inventing the game of basketball. So, um, you know, we were probably at around 30 employees or so before we started to say, okay, we're doing well, but we really want to scale this thing to the next level. We went and said, well, who's gotten to 100 million in revenue? Because I think we were at like five or we were small, and we said we want to get to 100 million. So what we did is we looked at companies in our area that had gotten to 100 million in revenue. We went on LinkedIn and we said, let's build an org chart for the top 5 people on the revenue side that got to this 100 million. And we look at the driver, meaning the number one person on that team, and we'd eliminate them immediately because I don't actually want the person driving the car. They got paid, they're not as hungry, and like they're good. Someone else is going to overpay them somewhere else. I'm not saying they're all horrible, but that was our theory, is like, get them out. So we looked at number 2, 3, and 4, and we said, okay, they were in the car. They know the playbook. It's not like, oh, I wonder what you do. Like, they know exactly what's coming. They've seen the road, but they've never driven it. And we say, here are the car keys. Come drive it with us, and let's go. And so, for us, that was huge. We did it on almost all of our key hires when we were looking to scale, because the biggest thing is when you're scaling, and I mean really scaling, not talking about like, oh, we went from 6 million to 8 million. That's cool. That's a great business. That's not scale. We're talking about you're going from 10 to 30 million revenue, 30 to 70 million in revenue. That's scale. You need people that have been down that road, and like my partner and I hadn't been down that road, so we went and hired people that had. They need to know what's around the next 3 corners. They need to be able to look at you and say, hey, here's what we're doing now. Here's what we're going to do in 6 months. Here's what's going to happen in a year. And here's our strategy. And literally our playbook that we did over here, but I'm going to do it a little different and go over here. So the car theory, I think, is super important to companies that are trying to scale. I would look at that heavily. Any questions on that before I get into my other game of basketball theory?
No, I like the thinking behind it. I had a conversation, our Sundance party on the weekend that that you're coming to. There's a guy who's flying in from another city for it that I just met this morning, and I'll try not to be scripted. They ramped their company up to hundreds of millions very quickly, sold the whole thing. He was, one of the 3 most important people in the company, but the CEO made 50 times as much money as him because he wasn't the founder. Yep. And he's like, he did well, but he's still hungry, and I'm like thinking like, oh, I wonder if that's the kind of guy Alex is talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, again, it doesn't mean you have to go get some bigwig. I think more often than not, when you go try to hire some bigwig from some other company, it's actually a failure because like you're hiring someone from Microsoft. Like in Seattle, this was an issue. People would hire some Microsoft, whatever. And I'm like, Microsoft runs at a different speed than your startup. Like Microsoft is going, they have meeting upon meeting upon meeting to decide what font is going to be in whatever software. And it's like, that's not your startup. Your startup, unless it's, that big, but your startup, if it's under, 100 million in revenue, needs like decisions left and right. And so you just have to understand the pace. So to me, I would go after someone who just did the sprint that you're doing and say, okay, let's go bring them in, but they have to be hungry because otherwise they just want to get paid. They're entitled. So the other thing, this is more specifically to founders than it is to, employees at these types of companies. But I used to say this a lot. And starting a company is like inventing a new sport. Let's use basketball. And so, okay, I've invented this new sport. You've never heard of it. Right now I'm the best shooter, the best dribbler, the best coach, the best. I know all the rules of basketball. I'm the best. But in order for basketball to get bigger, at some point I'm like, all right, we'll bring someone else to dribble, and they can pass to me, and I can shoot. And they're going to be a better dribbler because they know how to dribble. And then eventually, I'm gonna be like, oh, that guy's a better shooter. Okay, I'll be a better rebounder. Okay, and then oh, that guy's a better rebounder. Then I'm gonna go, be the coach. Okay, she's a better coach than me. Like ultimately, you have to constantly replace yourself as a founder, and you can't have the ego that you're the best at everything, because like you are not. You should be the best at vision, you should be the best at recruiting, you should be the best at putting money in the bank from fundraising standpoint, but you shouldn't be the best sales manager, or you shouldn't be the best engineer. There's someone else, that's all they do and have been doing it for a long time. Go bring them in and say, okay, can you be my point guard, can you be my sales manager, and enable them to do it. And you have to be willing to truly let go and let them own it. And that's, for a lot of people, I find, I know two CEOs right now, I will not use their names. They think they're the smartest people in the room, and it is to their detriment. Their company is going to maybe not fail. I don't think that's appropriate, but they will significantly limit their ability to scale because they just frankly think they're the best shooter and dribbler and rebounder out there, and they don't want to ever let it go. And I think that definitely harms them.
So thinking about that, when you are, let's say you are like genuinely inventing a new category, right? And you're trying to adapt somebody who had like great success in this other realm. So you think they should be able to be better than you at this, except it's a new category. Okay. How do you thread that needle of the like, well, I'll just,
hold on. What's a new category? Like for example, we were innovating in the fintech space, right, at Divvy, but that didn't, like, I could hire a sales manager to be great at sales managing. I could hire a head of HR to be great at head of HR, and I could hire an engineer. Ultimately, us innovating on the fintech space is the vision. That's what comes back to our earlier discussion. My partner and I had to have that vision, and we have to march people towards that mountain and say, that's where we're going. But someone's a better sales manager than me. I hadn't been a sales manager.
I'll give you an example.
Like that level.
CRMs have been around forever. When Mark Benioff leaves Siebel and starts Salesforce, it's still just a CRM. But this idea of like no software, it's so fundamentally different. It's almost like its own category, right? And so like obviously we've been able to watch movies at home with Blockbuster, but the way Netflix brought it to us, streaming, it was almost like a new category, even though we're just watching videos. Okay.
Yeah, but that goes. Okay,
let me ask my question. So I'll give you an example with us. So we're trying to build these. Our new thing is developing these, essentially like amusement parks for action sports families, where it's like Airbnb resort off grid near national park or surfing beach or snowboarding mountain, right? And we're using some alternative building technology so we can build them at half price to traditional construction, but we're trying to make it like 2 or 3 times more attractive because of all the bike jumps and the zip lines and all the stuff, except it costs the same as the Marriott or the Airbnbs in town. You just get so much more with it, kind of thing. And so like I've got a guy who's a way better developer than me. He's a developer on the Ritz-Carlton in Portland, and he helped do $1 billion REIT in Singapore, and we get along well, and I trust him, he trusts me, and he's like objectively a better developer than me, like on all accounts.
Okay.
And my question is, I can really trust his 24 years of development experience with the most prestigious names in the world. And I still have to transfer my vision. And so this is my question, like when my staff are actually better at the job than me, but I need to transfer the vision for them to do it my way. I'm not coming up with a good question, but do you see what I'm trying to do?
No. So I'll give you an example of where that, like, a conversation is going to come up, and the developer guy you're talking about is going to say, hey, this is the way we do it.
Yeah.
You need these processes in place, or you're going to say, it takes this long, or whatever. He's going to say, this is the way it's done. And you're saying, and you have to know when that intercedes with your vision versus that's like, okay, that's a safety protocol. We're gonna do that. That's fine. Someone needs to go execute there. But when you talk about the vision of this action sports Airbnb
Disneyland
concept, which, by the way, side note, like I've been trying to build Nitro Circus by myself, like in the woods. I'm all in on this idea, so let's go. I'm in. But There will come a time where he's going to say, this is how we want to do it. And you're like, no, 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 I don't think you understand. It needs to look and feel like this. That thing you built, that super nice entrance with this, no, 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 that's not what we want. What we want is a toy barn with toys and zip lines. And you're going to have to fight him and he tries to make it a development that is very similar to like a Marriott or whatever. That feel might be more formal than you're really looking for. And so if you see an image or if you have a discussion, you're like, that's not on brand for who we are. That is not our core DNA. That is not us. You need to jump in and say, no, no, no.
Okay,
that's not what we're doing.
So stoked you said it this way because it helped me clarify my question actually was, how do I know when to trust my expert who I hired because he's better than me? And when do I know when to trust myself?
I would say if it's on your vision, right? Like, right, you know what your vision is. You 100%, you've already articulated, but in your mind, when you go to bed and you think about this concept, you're like, oh man, I know exactly what this looks like. Like, hey, maybe there's a core center and there's these houses and, you got these racetracks. Like, you know what it looks like. You know what people are going to come spend money on. So you hold to that and you can't let people change you off of that. And again, maybe you move an inch or something, but that you have the vision. Everything else is like up for discussion, right? Like, how we onboard. I'll give you a very clear example with us because I can think of one with Divvy that came up. But how you onboard people, or what how people pay, or how long they stay, like all these things are for discussion. As long as it doesn't interrupt the vision that you have and ultimately what you're trying to build. Like you're Willy Wonka, you're building the Willy Wonka factory. You're gonna have someone who can build the factory for you, but if it doesn't have your vibe and your energy and your whatever, it won't be Willy Wonka's factory. It'll just be another chocolate factory, and there's a big difference. So at Divvy, we wanted to build an onboarding solution where you could just do everything so much easier, like create a virtual card, create a budget, and all these things that in the finance world they'd be like, yeah, we can do that. I'm like, yeah, it takes me 17 clicks. We want to do it in 2. They're like, oh no, well it's fine, we can do that. And we're like, no, I don't think you understand what we're saying. Your user experience is not what we're talking about. Or them going to your website to fill out some form and then coming back to our website is a disaster because that's not the vision we're talking about for these small businesses. It will stop everything, not the vision. So when that would happen, you have to be like pretty cutthroat to be like, that's not what we're building here. And if I haven't explained to you and you don't see the vision well enough, then that's on me to not explain Willy Wonka's factory. But again, that's what makes the startup. That's what makes something cut through is you don't do what's been done a million times.
So
yeah.
And maybe this is like a bad analogy, but what I'm hearing you say is almost like destination inflexible, vehicle flexible, or like architecture inflexible. Like this is what it looks like and it's done, but like construction process flexible, where the experts say, here's the best way to build that.
And he might say, and they might come to you, your team might say, well, okay, I know what we're getting. We can get there by doing it this way, not that way. And you're like, okay, let's have that discussion. But yes, destination is like mostly not flexible. And again, there's always a little flexibility, but there's a difference between like Elon Musk building Tesla and saying, oh, I wanted to have this, but okay, it can be slightly different. But like conceptually, he knew what he was building and what it looked like. And you can tell. And like, again, the reason it's such incredible product design is every element about it is like screams his vision, which is minimalist, simplicity, easy use. I'll give you a very good example. I have the Rivian. I like my Rivian, but I loved my Tesla. I have a list of 20 things that the Tesla did that the Rivian doesn't do. And it's all these little things that make my experience better with the Tesla than it does with my Rivian. I'll give you one example. If I were, we were meeting today, somewhere for lunch, and I got into my Tesla, but autofill like my maps on my calendar to say you're going here, so it's already there. On Rivian, I've got to pull out my phone. I've got to get the address. I got to say Alexa, and then go through the whole thing with Rivian. It's like, can I do it with Rivian? Yeah, but you can clearly say that Musk was like, no, make it as easy as possible, and that's how we change the world. That's what your vision has to hold to. Is like, if we don't build this action sports Airbnb in the woods that has all this fun thing, and some safety officer wants to come in and say you can't do it, at some point you either need to say this doesn't fit my vision, we got to stop the project. Or like say, I'm going to bulldoze this thing, we're making it happen.
Yeah. Like if this thing isn't so crazy, you have to sign the kind of waiver like you're going to a ski hill or a skydiving place, then we failed.
I want, like, I've been thinking about this so we can make this whole thing shift into this world. I'm like, I think there's a dearth of, no, sorry, let me say this. So much TV to watch. On every night there's a movie, there's a show, there's a sports game, or whatever I can watch. And on my phone, there's TikTok and Snap and Instagram. So I can be constantly engaged, just looking in front of me. But I think people really miss being out and like getting their heart rate up. And like we live in a world of liability. We live in a world of just like, like, oh, so the world of like riding a horse truly free is like gone, right? The world of like, no, 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 I wanted to go do something a little crazy is gone. And I think people are so interested in saying, wait a minute, how do I do something that gets my heart rate going with all my friends or family or whatnot? But that means when you build this vision, it's like people have to see that. Have you seen Newsies, the old movie?
I don't know if I ever
The
saw it. Like with Christian Bale.
Oh man, Christian Bale's in it. His whole dream was to get to Santa Fe. So I've had this saying recently, like, you know, that's the Santa Fe is your, nitrous circus factory. It's your, this place. In your mind, you should shut your eyes and be like, this is what it looks and feels like. And everything at your company needs to gear towards like, no, this is what it looks and feels like. And if it doesn't, you got to cut it. And I look at like Disneyland. What makes Disneyland great? They're all in on the experience and blah, all the things that they do. They never shortcut that vision. And as hard as it might be to achieve it, they freaking achieve it because they know that's the secret sauce. And by the way, every startup has something that the founder, if your vision isn't that strong, then you don't then like you're selling insurance and you're just hoping to have some good sales reps. Like cool, but that's never going to be that big of a company.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah. Well, listen, you get interviewed, you get asked a lot of questions. What are you most passionate to talk about lately? Open mic here. What do you want to talk about?
This Nitro Circus thing. No. This Airbnb in the woods. I'm in. Yeah, that's a good question. I've been working a lot with. Okay, here you go. I work a lot with younger people, 20s, that are coming out of school or in school looking for opportunities. Where I'm hiring for a role right now. And so I get a lot of people that ask for career advice as an example. Like, how can I achieve X or, get to where you're at, whatever. I know of two people, and to me, I'm bringing this up as a passion because I think it's going by the wayside. Um, I sent out an interview. People applied. We gave some people some homework, very vague on purpose because I wanted to see what they would do with this vague instruction. And this one person, I won't mention her name, but she's very good. She crushed it. Everything about what she did was like she went the extra mile. She was like very clear. She's like, here's what we have. She knew everything about it. It was the opposite of entitlement. It was like, oh my gosh, this person really wants to build their career. They provided value for me on this little homework assignment for this job. And I just was like, entitlement creeps up, I think, in the younger generation right now because there's such great jobs and the economy largely is pretty good that they come out of school thinking, well, I have my degree. How do I get paid, six figures like first year? And I'm seeing this like right now. And then I see this other person and I'm like, no, that's what you do. Like you take it, like some people's homework was so bad they're just like waiting for you to tell them like, well, yeah, give me the money. And I'm like, no, no, no. Take the homework assignments of your life. Take full ownership over how to deliver on them in a super special way. And this person's like, they're going to get paid a ton of money and they're going to get a ton of opportunity because they just went the extra mile and they owned the thing. And they are the opposite of entitled. And they're taking a pay cut from where they're coming, which is a different discussion. And I just am like so jazzed for this person because I'm like, they're doing exactly what I want to see the younger generation do, which is like go the extra mile, own the projects that you're given, and deliver them, and be so proud of the work that you're doing that like it will be noticed, and you will get promoted, or you'll get some opportunity, and your whole career will be made. Just go the extra mile. So I don't know. That's my like high horse, but
so where does that not apply though? Do you remember that George Caslin book from like the 50s, The Richest Man in Babylon?
Yeah.
I mean, he's saying the same thing back then. This idea of like those people who put in that extra effort, engage their brain fully, they don't mail it in. They're like, aren't those people just absurdly magnetic? We want to invest with those people. We want to hire those people. We want to hang out with those people. Like, as a life strategy, like regardless of your level of life, right?
So I like the phone, and I'm as guilty as anyone, but the phone distracts, right? So like whenever you hit up social media or hit up a game or whatever you do on your phone, it distracts from like this engaged one-on-one conversation. So when you're in a room, whether it's a networking event or with family or even with like your partner or whatever, put your phone away and engage, because as you just said, those that like fully engage and look at the task that they're doing, whether that's socializing or performing at work, if you fully engage, it's like such a rare commodity these days that people are almost like blown away. Like, oh, wait a minute! Like this person's looking me in the eye and having an engaging conversation and asking questions. You will stand out at a networking event. You'll stand out in your relationships. Like everyone's going to think you're a superstar. All you're doing is like talking to someone, but without distraction.
Like, so I brought up the party on the weekend, the Sundance party that's coming up. We did, every time we do one of these, without fail, at the end of it, we have like billionaires saying, I want to host the next one. Let's do it at my place. Like people love it so much because it's it's a very non-phone environment, the nature of these events where it's like, there's no plus ones. It's just all people who are high achievers at what they do. But it's like people from outside their sector, so we have like, at the last one, we had like, I'm trying to think of I think it's fine to say, I had the president of Will Smith's production company right here, and the guy who built the biggest skateboard company in the world to 10,000 employees here. And, guy who got a $500 million AI robotics company here. And, this billionaire who has these like modular homes that unfold here. Right. And it's like, they all go to the coolest parties of what they do, but they don't go to parties where they've got such a interesting mix. Right. And because of the nature of it, like, because it's so one-on-one, there's like, the room is kind of electric because it's like interesting people who they don't normally interact with, but it's not full of like mediocre musical number and speakers,
Yeah, but think about it. Those also can go totally wrong, right? I've been in some of these rooms where high achieving people basically just want to talk about
Oh,
themselves.
sure. Yep.
And so it's like, they go wrong when they want to talk about themselves, and you actually need to, like that's the point about engaging, is saying, okay, what's interesting about this person, whether they're super successful or they're poor. You need to be able to say like, what do they have that's interesting to me, and focus on it and engage them, ask them questions. Again, they could have a super interesting story. If they're not for you or not your fit, just go to someone else and have an engaging conversation. But put your phone away and sit there and be like, all right, let's talk to this person. And when you have real conversations.
No, I think you make a good point too. Like, it's so easy to talk about the kind of people the media wants to cover already. But this idea of like, what can we learn from people at all levels is interesting too. Like, I think about how many of the founders that I really, really admire who've been on the show, who are like, they listen with more humility to anybody, like any random customer who isn't like some expert in their space. So like, I don't like how this, like this didn't work for me.
So
and like,
I think there are uninteresting people out there. I want to be clear, right? Like, it's not like every single person has some miracle to teach you, but it's also like there are super interesting people that are not CEOs or founders or wealth creators. And I think, you might engage with someone at the local nonprofit or the school or a teacher or a friend's nephew, whoever, just engage. And I think actually deliberately like engage with people is such a skill that we're missing, because it's so easy to distract, right? It's easy to hop on the internet, on your phone, and things like that. And I just, in business too, sit down and say, okay, what is my task or my startup? What is the thing I'm trying to achieve? Get rid of distraction. And by the way, there's a time for distraction. Go home and at some time at night, be like, this is distraction time, and go get distracted. But when it's time to focus, put things away and say, okay, I'm going to go knock this problem down, or I'm going to go achieve this thing. And you can tell in the work that people do that they're like, oh, okay, they were clearly focused and executed. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. I found I've had to work on that with my kids. I think it's so easy to take kids for granted, right? And like, I started reading this book, The Daily Dad by Ryan Holiday. Like, I love Obstacles the Way and all the other Ryan Holiday books. But the have you heard of this one, The Daily Dad?
No.
So it's it's pretty awesome. Like, it's just like all these reminders to engage. And like, I'm a churchy guy, so I read my scriptures every day. And then I added this, like, read the Daily Dad for just like, it's just one quick
Okay.
thing, right?
It, is it text you or is it an app or what is it?
It's just an audiobook. I mean, there's a paper book, but I just listen to the audiobook.
Oh,
So
okay,
I just
okay,
listen to like the next day. It's like 365 days, right? So it's
okay,
all these
cool.
stories of like a famous person or an interesting person and either their parent or when they were parenting or just these lessons, right? And like, it's so easy because kids will always like, especially when you're like, you know, when you're a busy startup founder dad, like, family is used to you being gone or being busy or things like this.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I found that it's like between being busy with work and like being so engaged in my audiobooks or being so entertained, like TikTok, like you said, or some YouTube, right? This book has actually really helped me be like, turn the phone off. Like, one of my kids is in the room, like, turn the phone off, take my AirPods out. Like, noise canceling
Yeah.
headphones have not been good for like parent child connection. You know what I mean?
They're great for
Yeah,
airplanes,
they
but
are. Yeah.
yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
And this idea of like, I think that there's been too many times in my life where, so my kids are 19, 17, 15, and 12. And I think there's been too many times in my life where like I'm in the same room with them, but I'm not really present with them, you know? And as you're saying that,
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about like, I am trying to up my game of being like even more intentionally present and connected with them. Even when I'm talking to them, I'm not always like deeply engaging like I could be.
So BYU does this girl dad camp. I don't know if you've heard of
Mm-mm.
this, but I have daughters that are at the age. And so my boys, I have two boys and two girls. It's easy for me to connect with my boys because they want to come play catch or they want to wrestle or they want to play basketball. So they just tell me, Dad, I want to play catch. And then I can't be on my phone. I'm playing catch. So it's like that's super easy, or we would naturally watch a sports game together. So my boys get a lot of time, and my girls, like we have a good relationship, but I find not as much time has been spent. So BYU came out with this kind of girl dad camp. It's for a weekend, and it's like put your cell phone away for 2 full days, like Friday night to Sunday at lunch. Like it's dad and daughter, or just every 30 minutes it's a new daddy daughter date. It's dance to volleyball to whatever, and such powerful weekend because of the focus. Because it's like, hey, you're here with this daughter, and you're going to create connections and memories and jokes, and put away your phones and it like reminds me. I know we can do it outside of this camp, but it was just a good reminder when I went to this camp of like, oh, this is really powerful. My daughter loved it, and all she really loved was dad and daughter time, like focused daddy daughter time. And so I was like, all right, yeah, we're gonna do a better job of it.
Okay, I got to look that up. That sounds great, actually. Um,
It's a lot of fun.
so I know we've only got a couple minutes left here. What's one of your favorite books of all time for an early stage founder?
Early stage founder. I'm going through a few in my mind. Um, oh man, it
You can do more than one.
depends
Just
on
give
where
us
you're.
give us a couple of great ones.
Yeah. So oh shoot, what's the one? Oh man, I'm gonna like fail this entire answer. The loon shot, is that what it's called? It's basically thinking big is the concept. I think it's called loon shot. And it uses Google as its kind of like origin story. But I think if you're out to innovate and out to change the world, don't be afraid to like really go for it. So the loon shot is really really cool. Like that a lot. Honestly, Atomic Habits is good. Like, there's so many good business books. We could go through a list of them. I think where you're at and what you need to hear, as long as it's inspiring you to get up and build on that vision, um, then read it. And I think most business books, by the way, are like read the first four chapters and just move on to the next book because they kind of repeat themselves. Um, but I'm a big fan of Loonshot and a bunch of books like Atomic Habits. I actually, frankly, a genre I really like that I think is inspiring. Like, have you ever read Sir Ernest Shackleton?
Um, no,
Endurance.
no, but just like the great by choice story of him.
No, so like it's not a business book, but he's the greatest leader we have, like in the history of mankind, because of how he led his people, his men, and his vision of what they were trying to do and his integrity for how they did it. You read it, and yes, it's an explorer book, but you start to get a sense of like, oh, that's the type of leader I need to be for people to follow me into the most insane scenarios. Which, by the way, most of your startups are insane scenarios. Like the level of effort and commitment and things that you're doing like usually requires that. And these people had nothing, they had no funding, and they followed this man to the end of the earth. Ultimately failed, frankly, but they like loved it. So I stuff like the Endurance by about Sir Ernest Shackleton, I would 100% read
Okay,
because
I'm
I
gonna
just
get
think
that one.
that type of story is super powerful. So
Uh,
good audio.
Audible, here I come. I'm gonna get that one.
All
Have
right,
you uh
sounds good.
have you ever heard of this World War II book, Natural Born Heroes? It's super interesting. It's kind of got some crazy stuff from the author in it, but it's these true life stories of these British guys who are harassing the Nazis on Crete to keep them occupied with a bunch of like native Cretians, and
Okay.
and they just do like super crazy stuff, sneaking into like there'd be like four dudes, and they like sneak into Nazi airfields and like cause major mayhem, and like they
Yeah.
they I want to say it was like six or eight of them or something, like not a big force against like hundreds of Nazis. They like sneak into the camp at night and kidnap the head general without any of the Nazis finding out. And like they wake up and the general's gone. And like just like
Yeah,
the
love it.
most bombastic, crazy stuff. Actually,
Yeah.
Guy Ritchie has a movie coming out about it based on a book called
Oh, really?
I'm in the middle of it right now. The Department of Ungentlemanly Warfare. I can't remember what Churchill called it, but there's a book about it
Okay.
that's it's got even more of the stories. But Natural Born Heroes is so well written that you can't stop. It's such a page turner.
Yeah. I, but even like again, those stories, they were doing something crazy, right? Like four guys were essentially trying to take on a whole camp of Nazis. That to me is a startup, or even if you're doing something big, it should sound insane. It should sound like overwhelming. And when you read this, you see the characteristics and the personalities and the vision. Like what was driving them to do that, right? They clearly had origin stories and passions to say we're going to stand up for XYZ. And I think that stuff translates for sure.
Yeah. Maybe a final one then. Um, when you think about somebody who when you think about somebody who had a huge effect on your life, maybe early on, whether it's a boss, a parent, a grandpa, somebody that's like, man, I hope to turn out like them in life. Who's somebody that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I'll actually talk about my dad. And I think I kind of recognized this later on in life, not necessarily like in high school per se. So my dad has certain skills he's really skilled at. He always worked hard. He, was able. We were middle class, maybe slightly upper, but we weren't like crazy wealthy. But he worked really hard, built his own company. All that stuff was great. What I really loved about my dad is he worked really hard on his weaknesses. So I think he would admit he had a tendency to be critical at times or to be hard. But to me, I now that I've gotten older, I've realized how hard he's worked to soften what is not natural to him and to be, kinder and to be more thoughtful and to work on his weaknesses. And so, like obviously I love my dad for a lot of reasons, but I look at that and I think too many people just kind of like, well, no, this is who I am. Like this is how I am as they get older. And I've seen my dad work really hard to just be a better person and succeed at all sorts of things in his life, even when it wasn't naturally easy. And I think I have a tendency to always go towards what I'm naturally good at, and there's value to that. But I admired that a lot, and I think that's something the rest of us. What? Because two reasons. One, it's hard to go against your natural DNA of what your initial reactions. Second thing is you have to humble yourself and acknowledge, like, I'm not good at this thing. And to be the best at work or the best in life or whatever, you have to sit down and say, I'm not good at that. And I have to acknowledge it. And now I have to work on how I can get better at that. Otherwise, you're just going to always have some giant gaping holes in either your work delivery or in your personal relationships if you don't recognize it and go after solve it. So I'll go with it.
That's great. It's interesting how that kind of intentional self-mastery and like upgrading yourself is contagious, like an example like that, right?
He's fought a lot of battles in his time, and he just constantly overcomes them. So it's inspiring to watch.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, thanks for making time for this. This is great.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks, Jess. Appreciate it. We'll see you on Saturday.
Okay, bye everyone.